The desert sun blazed mercilessly over the arid hills of the Middle East. Sergeant Kaela Draven lay prone on a rocky ridge, her M24 sniper rifle steady against her shoulder. She had seen countless operations like this one, but something felt different today. The enemy convoy had appeared exactly where intelligence said it would. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger as she exhaled slowly, preparing for the shot that would change everything. A sudden burst of gunfire shattered the silence. Ambush. Bullets ripped through the air around her. Kaela returned fire with cold precision, dropping 2 hostiles before a searing pain exploded in her side. She clutched the wound, blood soaking through her uniform, her vision blurred as she collapsed behind cover. "Not like this," she muttered through gritted teeth. The world spun. A strange shimmering light tore open in front of her, pulling at her body like an invisible current. Darkness swallowed her whole. When Kaela opened her eyes again, everything had changed. Bitter cold bit into her skin. Snowflakes drifted lazily from a steel-grey sky. She lay half-buried in a deep drift, her breath visible in ragged clouds. The desert was gone. In its place stretched an endless forest of towering pines heavy with fresh snow. Her side still burned, but the wound felt strangely less fatal. She pushed herself up on one elbow, gasping at the icy air that filled her lungs. Distant voices reached her, deep, growling tones mixed with the crunch of paws on snow. A patrol emerged from the tree line. Massive wolves moved with disciplined grace, their fur thick and layered against the cold. At their head strode a silver-grey female, taller and more imposing than the rest. Her black markings traced elegant patterns across her powerful shoulders. She carried herself with the unmistakable authority of a leader. Captain Saelira Korvath halted abruptly, her golden eyes narrowing. She had never seen anything like the creature before her. Bare skin, no fur at all except for a dark patch on her head. Strange clothing stained with blood. And that scent, sharp, alien, carrying notes of smoke and metal and something unmistakably foreign. Her soldiers growled in alarm, hackles rising. "Stay back," Saelira commanded, her voice steady and low. She approached cautiously, muscles coiled. Kaela tried to speak, but weakness pulled her under again. Without hesitation, Saelira gripped her collar and dragged the heavy human through the snow toward a sheltered thicket. Her patrol formed a wary circle around them. One of the soldiers snarled. "Captain, what is that thing? It's smell, it's wrong." Saelira did not answer immediately. She studied the unconscious human. She was clearly a warrior, scarred, lean, and carrying strange equipment. As she shifted her to check the wound, the human's gloved hand caught on her rifle. The weapon discharged with a deafening crack that echoed through the forest like thunder. Birds exploded from the trees. The wolves froze in terror. "The thunder stick," one soldier whispered. "Just like the forbidden scrolls." Saelira's ears flattened. Ancient prophecies spoke of a bare-skinned outsider who would arrive with a weapon that spoke like lightning and thunder. The bare-skinned savior, or destroyer. Her people had dreaded this day for centuries. She looked down at the human's face, noting the sharp lines of pain and exhaustion etched there. She was no ordinary beast. She was something far more dangerous. Her soldiers pressed closer, voices rising with fear and aggression. "We should end it now, Captain, before the curse spreads." Saelira rose to her full height, placing herself between them and the fallen woman. Her mind raced. Executing her would be simple, safe, but something deeper, a soldier's instinct perhaps, told her this stranger might hold answers the kingdom desperately needed. The storm clouds above seemed to press down heavier, as if the land itself sensed the arrival of change. As they prepared to move her toward the capital under heavy guard, a new figure appeared at the edge of the clearing. High Shaman Malzath, his dark robes dusted with snow and his eyes burning with zealous fire, stepped forward. He stared at Kaela Draven with a mixture of horror and recognition. "The prophecy is fulfilled," Malzath declared, his voice carrying across the patrol like a death knell. "Behold the bare-skinned savior. She has come to Frostreach, and she will bring either our salvation or our end." Saelira's grip tightened on her spear. The weight of centuries now rested on her shoulders and on the unconscious human she had pulled from the snow. Sergeant Kaela Draven regained consciousness to the taste of iron and the ache of cold stone beneath her. Her eyes snapped open, scanning the dim surroundings with ingrained military instinct. Thick iron chains bound her wrists to the wall of a circular tower cell. Narrow, arrow-slit windows allowed thin shafts of grey daylight to cut through the gloom, revealing heavy wooden beams and walls draped in faded tapestries that depicted snarling wolves under a full moon. The air smelled of pine resin, damp fur, and distant wood smoke. Her rifle was nowhere in sight, but her side wound had been crudely bandaged with clean linen strips. She tested the chains once, twice, then forced herself to breathe steadily. This was not a dream. The snow, the wolves, the silver-grey female, it was all real. The heavy door groaned open. Captain Saelira Korvath stepped inside alone, her posture rigid and commanding. She wore polished leather armor reinforced with steel plates that gleamed dully in the low light. Her golden eyes locked onto Kaela's with unwavering intensity. 2 armed guards remained visible in the corridor outside, their ears pricked forward in suspicion. "You are awake," Saelira said, her voice low and measured. She stopped just beyond arm's reach. "Speak, Bearskin. What are you? How did you come to our lands?" Kaela met her gaze without flinching. "Name's Kaela Draven, Sergeant, United States Army. 1 minute I'm bleeding out in the desert, the next I'm freezing in your snow. I don't know how I got here any more than you do." Saelira circled her slowly, studying every detail. The lack of fur on the human's arms and face unsettled her. Kaela's scent, sharp gunpowder, sweat, and something uniquely human, filled the cell and stirred conflicting instincts. Part of her wanted to recoil, another part felt an inexplicable pull toward the quiet steadiness in the woman's posture. "A world without fur," Saelira murmured, almost to herself, "without magic. You claim your people build machines that fly through the sky and weapons that kill from miles away. It sounds like the ravings of a madwoman or the warnings in our oldest scrolls." She asked question after question, probing for lies. Kaela answered honestly, describing cities of steel and glass, wars fought with technology instead of tooth and claw, and the loneliness that came with losing comrades in faraway deserts. As she spoke, Saelira found herself listening more intently than she intended. Kaela's voice carried the weight of hard-won experience, and her eyes, steady, haunted, reflected a deep isolation that felt uncomfortably familiar. Before the interrogation could deepen, frantic howls erupted from the courtyard below. A soldier burst into the cell. "Captain, Ironjaw raiders! They've breached the outer wall! Dozens of them!" Saelira's ears flattened. She turned to leave, but Kaela's voice stopped her. "Give me my rifle. I can help." She hesitated, weighing the risk. High Shaman Malzath's demands for the human's immediate execution still echoed in her mind. Yet the desperation in the distant sounds of battle made her decide. She unlocked Kaela's chains with a heavy key. "If you betray us, I will kill you myself." They rushed to the tower battlements. Chaos spread across, their dark fur bristling with aggression. Arrows flew and steel clashed. Saelira barked orders, but the defenders were outnumbered. Kaela spotted her M24 resting on a nearby weapons rack. She grabbed it, checked the chamber with practiced hands, and moved to the highest vantage point. The scope felt familiar and grounding in this alien world. She exhaled, steadied her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. A thunderous crack split the air. An Ironjaw warrior leading the charge dropped instantly. Another shot, then another. Each precise round found its mark, sowing panic among the attackers, who had never heard such deadly, invisible strikes. Saelira watched in stunned silence as Kaela worked. Her movements were economical, her focus absolute. The quiet strength in her shoulders and the calm precision in her eyes stirred something deep within Saelira, respect, and the faintest flicker of warmth. The raiders broke and fled back into the forest, leaving their dead behind. Cheers rose from the wolves of Frostreach, but they died quickly when High Shaman Malzath appeared on the steps below, his robes swirling. "That creature's thunderstick is an abomination," Malzath roared. "She must be executed before the prophecy consumes us all." Saelira stepped forward, placing herself between the shaman and the tower stairs. Her voice rang clear and firm. She just saved our patrol and this outpost. We will bring her before King Borak for judgment, not slaughter in the snow." Malzath's eyes narrowed with barely contained fury, but he withdrew for now. Later, as the sun dipped lower and painted the snow in hues of rose and gold, Saelira returned to the cell where Kaela now sat unchained but still guarded. She brought a simple meal of roasted meat and bread. For a long moment, neither spoke. Saelira studied her again, noting the loneliness that lingered behind her guarded expression, the same quiet ache she carried since losing her mate in a long-ago border skirmish. "You fight well, Kaela Draven," she said softly. "Perhaps too well." Kaela looked up, their eyes meeting in the fading light. The air between them felt heavier, charged with unspoken questions and the slow, reluctant pull of two warriors who recognized their own scars in each other. But outside, the winds howled louder, carrying whispers of greater threats on the horizon. The grand hall of King Borak's fortress echoed with the low rumble of gathered nobles and warriors. Torches flickered along stone walls adorned with ancient banners, casting long shadows across the packed, snow-dusted floor. Sergeant Kaela Draven stood tall in the center of the chamber, her wrists lightly bound in ceremonial chains, her M24 rifle held securely by one of Saelira's most trusted guards. Captain Saelira Korvath stood at her side, her posture rigid, her silver-grey fur slightly bristled with tension. King Borak Grimfang lounged on a massive throne carved from ice-veined oak. The old wolf's muzzle was streaked with grey, but his golden eyes remained sharp and calculating. High Shaman Malzath hovered nearby, his dark robes whispering against the stone as he glared at the human with undisguised hostility. "Bring forth the bearskin," Borak commanded, his deep voice rolling through the hall like distant thunder. Kaela stepped forward. Saelira moved with her, a silent guardian. The king leaned forward, studying the stranger with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "You have already proven useful with your thunderstick," Borak said, "but usefulness does not erase danger. Malzath, show her the texts." The high shaman unrolled a massive yellowed scroll across a stone table. Ancient runes and vivid illustrations glowed faintly under torchlight. One image clearly depicted a hairless figure holding a weapon that spat lightning, standing amid a kingdom engulfed in either glorious light or consuming darkness. "The prophecy is clear," Malzath intoned. "The bearskin savior arrives with thunder in her hands. She will either deliver Frostreach from the encroaching shadow veil, a corrupting storm that devours magic and life, or she will shatter our realm entirely. We cannot risk the latter." Murmurs rippled through the court. Saelira's ears flicked back, but she kept her expression neutral. King Borak raised a paw for silence. "Captain Saelira Korvath, you found this outsider. You will serve as her escort and handler. Take her to the sacred archive in the Whispering Peaks. Let the Elder Scrolls there reveal more of her purpose. Guard her closely. If she shows any sign of fulfilling the darker half of the prophecy, you know what must be done." Saelira bowed deeply. "As you command, Your Majesty." Kaela met her eyes briefly. The weight of responsibility now rested on both of them. The journey to the Whispering Peaks took 2 days through deep snow and biting winds. Saelira rode a sturdy frost elk at the head of a small escort, while Kaela travelled on foot beside her, her boots crunching steadily. They spoke little at first, but the shared silence grew more comfortable with every mile. Saelira watched how she moved, efficient, always scanning the tree line, never complaining despite the cold that clearly bit deeper into her bare skin. On the second evening, they reached a sheltered valley where steam rose gently from a natural hot spring nestled among snow-covered boulders. The escort made camp a short distance away, granting them a rare moment of relative privacy. Saelira led Kaela to the spring's edge, where the warm water bubbled softly, melting the snow around it into a misty oasis. "Rest here," she said. "The heat will ease your wound and the cold's grip." They sat on smooth rocks near the water. The steam curled around them, carrying the faint mineral scent of the earth. For a long time, only the soft bubbling and distant howl of wind filled the air. Saelira stared into the water, her golden eyes distant. "I have carried leadership for many seasons," she said quietly, ever since I lost my mate in a raid along the eastern border. He was strong, loyal, but one arrow found its mark. After that, I buried myself in duty. The pack needs strength, not grief. Yet some nights the weight feels crushing. Kaela remained silent for a moment, respecting the vulnerability she had just offered. She picked up a small stone and turned it in her hands. "I know something about that weight," she replied. Her voice was low, rough around the edges. "Lost my spotter, my best friend, in an ambush 2 years back. One second she was joking about going home, the next, gone. I kept pulling the trigger, kept moving, but the silence after that day never really left. Some mornings I still wake up reaching for a rifle that isn't there, wondering why I'm still here when better soldiers aren't." Their eyes met across the rising steam. In that quiet moment, something shifted. Saelira noticed the way the firelight from their nearby camp played across the hard lines of Kaela's face, softening the exhaustion there. She saw the quiet strength that had carried her through 2 worlds. Kaela, for her part, found herself drawn to the graceful power in Saelira's posture and the unexpected gentleness hidden beneath her stoic command. A faint warmth bloomed in Saelira's chest, unfamiliar, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. She looked away first, ears twitching with uncertainty, but the flicker of attraction had already taken root. As the moon climbed higher and the hot spring continued its soft song, distant thunder rolled across the peaks. The shadow veil was growing stronger. Whatever answers waited in the sacred archive, one truth was becoming clearer. The bearskin and the wolf captain were now bound together by more than royal orders. The journey back from the Whispering Peaks turned treacherous far sooner than anyone expected. Captain Saelira Korvath led the small escort through a narrow mountain pass where the snow lay thick and undisturbed. Sergeant Kaela Draven walked close beside her frost elk, her rifle slung across her back and her senses on high alert. The air felt heavier than before, charged with an unnatural stillness that made the fur along Saelira's spine prickle. Without warning, howls shattered the silence. Dozens of iron-jaw warriors burst from the tree line, their dark fur camouflaged against the shadowed rocks. This was no mere raid. It was a coordinated ambush, far larger than the one at the outpost. Arrows whistled through the air. Battle cries echoed off the peaks as the rival clan crashed into the Frostreach patrol with savage force. "Form ranks," Saelira roared, leaping from her mount with spear in hand. Chaos erupted around them. Kaela moved instantly, dropping into a shooter's stance behind a cluster of boulders. "Saelira," she shouted over the din. "Take this!" Kaela tossed her a spare magazine and quickly demonstrated the basics of the rifle. "Keep it steady. Aim with both eyes open. Squeeze, don't pull. It kicks harder than you expect." Saelira hesitated only a heartbeat before accepting the weapon. Her golden eyes met Kaela's with fierce determination. In return, as the fighting pressed closer, she grabbed Kaela's arm and pressed her paw against her chest. "Feel the flow of the land," she urged, her voice urgent. "Channel the minor spirits of survival. Warmth against the cold, strength when your limbs fail. Breathe with the earth." Kaela felt a strange tingling warmth spread through her body where Saelira's paw touched her. The biting wind dulled slightly. She nodded once, then they turned back to back and fought as one. Kaela's thunder stick cracked repeatedly, dropping iron-jaw attackers at impossible distances and sowing terror among their ranks. Saelira, adapting swiftly to the rifle, fired with growing confidence while directing her soldiers with sharp commands. When a massive iron-jaw berserker charged her directly, Kaela stepped in without hesitation. She fired point blank, then shoved Saelira aside as another warrior's axe swung toward her flank. The blade caught Kaela across the ribs instead. White-hot pain exploded through her side. Blood sprayed across the pristine snow, staining it a vivid crimson. She staggered but stayed on her feet, firing until the chamber clicked empty. Saelira's howl of fury cut through the battle as she finished the attacker with her spear, then dragged Kaela behind cover. Their combined efforts, human precision and wolf magic working in tandem, finally broke the Ironjaw assault. The surviving raiders retreated into the trees, leaving the pass littered with fallen warriors. The surviving Frostreach soldiers secured the area, but Kaela's vision blurred as she slumped against a rock. Blood soaked her torn clothing and dripped steadily onto the white ground. "Stay with me, Kaela," Saelira said, her voice tight with concern. She knelt beside her and began tending her wounds with practiced efficiency, tearing strips from her own cloak to bind the deep gash. Her paws moved gently over Kaela's bare skin, cleaning the injury with melted snow before pressing a herbal poultice against it. The close proximity made the air feel thick. Kaela's breathing was ragged, but her eyes remained locked on Saelira's. "You took that hit for me," Saelira whispered, her muzzle inches from Kaela's face. One paw lingered on her chest, feeling the steady, if strained, beat of her heart. In that moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. Saelira could smell the sharp tang of Kaela's blood, mixed with the now familiar scent of gunpowder and quiet strength. She noticed the way Kaela's jaw tightened against the pain, the quiet resolve that refused to let her show weakness. A charged warmth passed between them, deeper than mere gratitude. Kaela's hand rose slowly, brushing a strand of silver fur near Saelira's cheek. Their faces drew closer, breaths mingling in the cold air, the promise of something tender and unspoken hanging between them. The sound of approaching paws and voices shattered the intimacy. Reinforcements from the capital crested the ridge, Lieutenant Garrick at the lead. The wolves froze at the sight of their captain crouched so closely over the bare-skinned outsider, her paw still resting on Kaela's bare chest, the human's hand near her face. "What is the meaning of this?" Garrick growled, his ears pinned back in suspicion. Other soldiers murmured uneasily, eyes narrowing at the unnatural closeness. Saelira pulled back sharply, though her golden eyes still held Kaela's for one lingering second. She rose to address her lieutenant, voice steady once more. "The human fought bravely and saved many lives today. Tend to the wounded and prepare litters. We return to the fortress at once." As the patrol moved out, carrying the injured Kaela on an improvised stretcher, Saelira walked protectively beside her. The almost intimate moment by the blood-stained snow lingered in both their minds, a fragile spark growing steadily brighter despite the growing suspicion around them. Yet the shadow veil continued to spread across the horizon, and greater dangers loomed. Tension thickened within the stone walls of King Borak's fortress like an approaching storm. Word of the battle in the mountain pass had spread quickly, and with it came whispers and accusations. In the shadowed corridors and candle-lit chambers, court intrigue began to stir. High Shaman Malzath moved among the nobles like a dark wind, his voice low and persuasive as he planted seeds of fear. The bearskin was no savior, he claimed. She was a harbinger of ruin whose very presence widened the shadow veil. Late one night, in a hidden alcove beneath the great hall, Malzath met with two of his most loyal acolytes. "The human must not live to see another full moon," he hissed. "Tonight, while the captain is occupied with council duties, ensure the deed is done quietly. A poisoned dart or a slit throat. Make it look like the wounds from battle claimed her." Unaware of the immediate danger, Sergeant Kaela Draven lay recovering in a better-appointed chamber, her fresh bandages tight around her torso. Captain Saelira Korvath had insisted on better quarters, citing her value to the kingdom's defense. She visited her often, though their conversations now carried an undercurrent of strain. During one such visit, Saelira brought a heavy, leather-bound tome borrowed from the royal archives. "The elders have translated more of the prophecy," she said, placing it on the table beside the bed. Her golden eyes avoided Kaela's at first. Kaela opened the book and read the illuminated passages with growing dread. The full text was far more specific than what they had seen before. The bare skin would either unite the realms or, through her continued existence, tear open the rift permanently. One passage stood out in stark red ink. "Only the willing sacrifice of the outsider's blood upon the ancient altar shall seal the wound between worlds and banish the shadow veil forever." Kaela's face hardened as she absorbed the words. "So I might have to die to fix this," she said quietly, closing the book. "That's what they're really after, isn't it?" Saelira's ears flattened. "The prophecy is old and open to interpretation. I will not let them use you as a sacrifice." But doubt had taken root. Kaela began to withdraw, the easy camaraderie they had built fracturing under the weight of destiny. She questioned every kind gesture from Saelira, wondering if the captain was simply protecting a tool for her kingdom rather than the woman beneath the title. The fracture widened when Saelira received direct orders from King Borak himself, influenced heavily by the shaman. "Keep the human alive for now," the king had said, "but prepare her for the possibility of ritual offering if the shadow veil advances further." Saelira openly defied the spirit of the command. She doubled the guards outside Kaela's chamber, guards loyal to her personally, and confronted Malzath in the Great Hall, publicly challenging his authority and risking her rank in the process. "You would murder a warrior who has bled for Frostreach simply to ease your fears?" she growled at the shaman. "I will not stand by while honor is discarded." That night, as the northern lights danced across the sky in shimmering curtains of green and violet, Saelira slipped away from her duties and found Kaela on a high balcony overlooking the snow-covered courtyard. Kaela stood alone, wrapped in a thick fur cloak, staring at the ethereal lights. Saelira approached slowly, her paws silent on the stone. "Kaela!" Kaela turned, her expression guarded. "Come to check on your investment?" The words stung. Saelira stepped closer until only a breath of cold air separated them. Snow began to fall gently around them, catching the glow of the aurora. "I defied my king tonight to keep you alive," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Not because of any prophecy, but because I know you now. I have seen your courage, your quiet pain, and the way you protect others even when it costs you everything." Kaela searched her face. The northern lights painted Saelira's silver fur in luminous colors, making her look almost otherworldly. "And what do you see when you look at me, Saelira? Still a monster from another world?" Saelira reached out slowly and placed her paw against Kaela's bandaged side, careful not to press too hard. "No," she whispered. "I no longer see a monster at all. I see a woman who carries the weight of two worlds on her shoulders. A woman who makes me question everything I thought I knew about strength and loneliness." Their eyes locked, the charged silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft whisper of falling snow. Kaela's hand rose to cover Saelira's paw, the warmth of her palm contrasting with the cold night. For a long moment, the doubts and fears receded, replaced by a deeper, more tender connection. Saelira leaned in slightly, her muzzle brushing near Kaela's cheek in a gesture that hovered between comfort and something far more intimate. Yet the distant sound of approaching footsteps reminded them both that their time was never truly their own. The court intrigue continued to swirl, and the shadow veil loomed ever larger on the horizon. The shadow veil had grown bolder. Reports from the northern borders spoke of entire forests withering overnight, magic twisting into something foul and hungry. King Borak had no choice but to send a small team to investigate the source. Captain Saelira Korvath volunteered immediately, and she insisted that Sergeant Kaela Draven accompany her. Their escort was deliberately kept small, just Lieutenant Garrick and two other trusted soldiers, so they could move quickly through the most dangerous territory. They traveled for 3 grueling days into the frozen frontier, where the snow fell endlessly and the wind howled like grieving wolves. The temperature dropped so low that even the wolves shivered beneath their thick fur. Kaela's bare skin suffered worst of all, despite the heavy cloaks Saelira had provided. Each night they huddled closer around their meager fires, and each day their reliance on one another deepened. On the 4th morning, a sudden magical storm erupted. Corrupted winds whipped ice and shadow across the tundra, blinding them and scattering the rest of the escort. Saelira and Kaela became separated from the others, forced to press forward alone toward the heart of the darkness, a jagged obsidian spire pulsing with unnatural energy on the horizon. Exhaustion and isolation stripped away the last barriers between them. They shared their remaining supplies, Kaela using her rifle to hunt a hardy snow hare, while Saelira channeled minor magic to keep their shelter warm. In turn, Kaela taught her how to clean and maintain the thunderstick, their hands occasionally brushing during the lesson. Every shared hardship drew them tighter together. That evening, they made camp in the lee of a massive ice ridge. A small but steady campfire crackled between them, its flames the only warmth for miles. The corrupted storm had quieted for now, leaving an eerie, star-filled sky above. Saelira sat close to Kaela, closer than duty required, her silver-grey fur glowing softly in the firelight. "I have fought beside many warriors," Saelira said, her voice low and steady as she stared into the flames. but none have ever made me feel this seen. You carry your scars without complaint, Kaela Draven. You protect without demanding loyalty in return. In my world, that is rare. Kaela turned to face her fully, the fire reflected in her eyes. And you, Saelira, you carry the weight of your entire pack on your shoulders, yet you still found room to protect a stranger who shouldn't even exist here. I've spent years keeping people at a distance, but with you, I don't want to anymore. The confession hung in the cold air between them. Saelira's golden eyes searched Kaela's face, her ears twitching with nervous energy. She shifted closer, her paw resting on Kaela's arm. "This is forbidden," she whispered. "A wolf and a bearskin. Our worlds are too different." "Different doesn't mean impossible," Kaela replied. She reached up slowly, her fingers gently tracing the soft fur along Saelira's jaw. The contrast fascinated them both. Kaela's warm, smooth skin against Saelira's thick, velvety fur. Saelira leaned into the touch, a soft rumble escaping her chest. The physical differences felt strange at first, almost awkward, the way their faces aligned differently, the way Kaela's scent lacked the familiar musk of her kind, yet still drew her in powerfully. Yet the wonder outweighed the awkwardness. Saelira tilted her head, and Kaela met her halfway. Their first kiss was tentative, then passionate, a meeting of two lonely souls who had found home in the unlikeliest place. Saelira's muzzle pressed gently against Kaela's lips, careful yet eager, while Kaela's hand cupped the back of her neck. The kiss deepened as the fire crackled beside them, filled with months of slowly built tension, respect, and growing desire. For those precious moments, the prophecy, the storm, and the world outside ceased to exist. When they finally parted, both were breathing harder. Saelira rested her forehead against Kaela's, a small, rare smile touching her muzzle. "Whatever comes next," she said softly, "we face it together." Far to the south, in the capital of Frostreach, news of their closeness had already begun to spread. A surviving soldier from the scattered escort had returned early with tales of the captain and the bearskin fighting as one, sharing shelter and exchanging touches that went far beyond duty. Whispers turned into open murmurs. Unnatural, some called it. A betrayal of our blood, others growled. High Shaman Malzath seized on the rumors, fanning the flames of public outrage against Saelira. Even some of her own Frostguard began to question her loyalty. By the time Saelira and Kaela reunited with the remnants of their escort and began the return journey, the political storm awaiting them at home had grown nearly as dangerous as the magical one they had faced in the frontier. The bond between them had ignited into something real and powerful, but it was now burning in full view of a kingdom that might seek to extinguish it. Chaos descended upon the capital of Frostreach like an avalanche. The Ironjaw clan had gathered its full strength under a blood-red moon, launching a massive assault that shattered the outer defenses in a single night of savage fury. Howls and war drums echoed through the snowy streets as hundreds of dark-furred warriors crashed against the fortress walls. Arrows darkened the sky, siege towers creaked forward on massive sleds, and corrupted magic twisted the air, weakening Frostreach spells and bolstering the attackers. From the high battlements, Sergeant Kaela Draven surveyed the battlefield with grim focus. Her ribs still ached from earlier wounds, but there was no time for rest. "They're committing everything," she muttered to Saelira, who stood beside her in full battle armor, spear in paw and golden eyes blazing. Captain Saelira Korvath barked orders to her Frostguard, but her heart tore in two directions. King Borak had demanded she lead the central defense and keep the bearskin under close watch, preferably away from the front lines. Yet every instinct screamed that Kaela was their greatest weapon. And now, after the frozen frontier, her feelings for her ran far deeper than duty. "Stay close to me," Saelira told her fiercely. "We fight together." Kaela nodded. Using scavenged materials from the armory and broken siege equipment, she worked with frantic speed. She reinforced her M24 with metal bracing from fallen gates, crafted a makeshift elevated firing platform from shattered timbers and ice blocks, and even improvised explosive charges from black powder stores and oil-soaked rags. Positioned on the tallest tower, her thunderstick began to speak. Each precise shot felled Ironjaw commanders and siege operators from impossible distances. Panic rippled through the enemy ranks as invisible death claimed leader after leader. Saelira watched her with fierce pride, even as she fought in the thick of the fray below, her spear flashing in deadly arcs. Their coordination was seamless. Kaela's covering fire created openings for Saelira's charges, while Saelira's magic shielded her from arrows and stray spells. But the true crisis unfolded in the heart of the fortress. High Shaman Malzath, seeing the battle turning, rallied his acolytes. "The prophecy demands blood," he roared. While the king was occupied directing the defense, Malzath's followers seized Kaela during a brief lull, dragging her toward the ancient altar in the central courtyard. They bound her roughly, chanting ritual words as dark magic flared around the stone slab. Saelira sensed the betrayal instantly. She fought her way back through the chaos, bloodied and breathing hard, just as Malzath raised a ceremonial dagger above Kaela's chest. The shaman's eyes burned with fanaticism. "This is the only way to seal the rift and save our people." Time slowed for Saelira. King Borak's voice echoed in her mind. Duty, loyalty, the survival of Frostreach. But looking at Kaela, bound yet defiant, something deeper ignited within her. She remembered the hot spring, the northern lights, the kiss beside the campfire. She remembered what it felt like to no longer be alone. With a thunderous howl, Saelira defied everything. She charged the altar, slamming into Malzath and his guards in a whirlwind of fury. "She is not a sacrifice," she snarled. "She is the bridge we have been waiting for." The climactic fight erupted. Kaela broke free during the struggle, reclaiming a sidearm and fighting back-to-back with Saelira once more. Together they battled Malzath's acolytes and the shaman himself. Kaela's precise shots disrupted their spells, while Saelira's raw strength and magic tore through their ranks. In the chaos, Saelira shattered the ritual dagger, and Kaela delivered the final blow that felled Malzath, sending the shaman crashing to the snow. As the shaman lay defeated, the ancient altar cracked open, revealing long-hidden inner runes that glowed with soft, hopeful light. The full, true meaning of the prophecy finally revealed itself, not through destruction or sacrifice, but through union. The bearskin and the people of Frostreach were never meant to remain divided. Their bonding, their shared strength, and their willingness to change and accept one another was the key to banishing the Shadow Veil forever. The revelation spread like wildfire among the defenders. King Borak, witnessing the scene from the battlements, lowered his sword in stunned silence. With renewed hope, the Frostreach forces, bolstered by Kaela's sniper fire and Saelira's unbreakable leadership, pushed the Ironjaw clan back. The massive assault broke, and the enemy fled into the snows. Yet as the immediate victory settled, Saelira stood beside Kaela amid the blood-stained courtyard, their hands clasped openly. The choice she had made was irreversible. The kingdom had been saved, but the consequences of her defiance and their love were only beginning. The morning after the great battle dawned crisp and eerily quiet over the capital of Frostreach. Smoke still rose from ruined siege engines, and the snow in the courtyard bore the dark stains of conflict. But the Ironjaw clan had been driven back into the wilds. The Shadow Veil, once a devouring storm on the horizon, had begun to recede, its corrupted edges fraying under the light of the rising sun. The true prophecy had been fulfilled, not through death or sacrifice, but through the union of two worlds. Sergeant Kaela Draven stood on the battlements, her M24 rifle cleaned and resting beside her like an old friend. Her body ached from a dozen wounds, yet a strange peace had settled over her. The kingdom had survived, and so had she. King Borak approached with a heavy guard. His voice carried both gratitude and solemn judgment. "The bearskin fought valiantly for Frostreach. For that you have earned your life. But Captain Saelira Korvath, your defiance of royal orders and open fraternization with the outsider cannot go unpunished. You are hereby stripped of your rank and title. You are no longer a captain of the Frost Guard." Saelira stood tall beside Kaela, her silver-grey fur matted with dirt and dried blood. She accepted the judgment with quiet dignity, though pain flickered briefly in her golden eyes. The crowd that had gathered, however, saw things differently. Cheers erupted from soldiers and citizens alike. "Hero of the pass," they called. she who stood against the false sacrifice. Saelira had become a symbol to the people, proof that change could strengthen rather than destroy them. Later that afternoon, scouts reported a new development. A shimmering rift had opened in the same valley where Kaela had first arrived. It pulsed with familiar energy, a direct pathway back to her own world. The choice now rested entirely with her. As twilight painted the snow in shades of deep blue and violet, Saelira led Kaela to a secluded, snowy ridge overlooking the valley. The rift glowed softly in the distance, like a tear in the fabric of reality. They stood alone, the wind whispering through the pines, carrying the faint scent of pine and distant wood smoke. Saelira turned to her, her expression raw and unguarded. "This is your path home, Kaela Draven. Back to the world of steel and thunder you described by the hot spring. Back to the place where you know every rule of survival." Her voice cracked slightly. "I will not ask you to abandon it. You have already given more than any soul should." Kaela looked at the rift, then at her. The wolf who had dragged her from the snow, challenged her king, and taught her that strength could also mean opening one's heart. She stepped closer, taking Saelira's paw in both of her hands. The contrast of her warm skin against the soft fur felt perfectly right now. "Saelira," she said, her voice low and rough with emotion, "I spent years in my world fighting for things I couldn't save, losing people I couldn't protect. Every night I carried ghosts, but here, with you, I feel alive in a way I never did back there. You saw me when I was just a bare-skinned stranger. You fought for me when the world demanded my death. I love you, Saelira Korvath, not as a savior or a weapon, but as the woman who finally found where she belongs." Tears glistened in Saelira's golden eyes. She leaned down, pressing her muzzle gently against Kaela's forehead, then her lips in a deep, lingering kiss filled with all the love, fear, and devotion they had built across their impossible journey. When they parted, she rested her head against Kaela's shoulder. "I would follow you through that rift if I could," she whispered, "but my place is here, helping our people accept this new future. If you stay, we will face whatever comes together. No more prophecies dictating our fate, only us." The farewell they had both feared transformed into a vow. Kaela turned away from the rift without hesitation. With a deliberate motion, she lifted her rifle, the thunderstick that had once inspired terror, and planted it butt first into the snow beside them, its barrel pointing skyward like a banner of alliance. "I'm staying," she said firmly. "This is my home now, with you." They stood side by side on the snowy ridge. The full moon rises behind them, bathing their silhouettes in silver light. Saelira's silver-grey fur and Kaela's steady human form stand together, equal and unbreakable. The thunderstick between them gleams no longer as a weapon of dread, but as a symbol of unity between two worlds. In the distance, faint dark clouds gather once more on the farthest horizon, hints of new threats from beyond the frontier and the challenges of a kingdom learning to embrace change. Their hands remain clasped, their future uncertain but chosen. A new chapter for Frostreach had begun, and for Kaela and Saelira, their bond would only grow deeper in the ahead.